What do you think this is? It was taken almost 75 years ago, and we still can't say for sure. On August 30th, 1951, in Lubbock, Texas, college freshman and amateur photographer Carl Hart Jr. was lying in bed, looking out his window when he saw a formation of lights appear in the night sky. For the past few days, eyewitness stories of strange aerial phenomena have been circulating, so he quickly grabbed the loaded camera, hurried to the backyard, and snapped these iconic pictures. The photographs became tangible evidence of what the country would come to know as the Lubbock Lights. What truly sets it apart from other UAP cases is the amount of credible witnesses, the number of sightings, technological evidence, and no plausible explanation. The Lubbock Lights helped prompt the government to change how it handled unexplained objects in the sky. But the harder experts looked, the bigger the mystery became. These photos are just the beginning of a long, complicated tale. Dozens of people across multiple nights described the same bluish-green light formations moving across the sky in coordinated patterns. Other witnesses were college professors, astronomers, physicists, and people trained to observe the sky. They ruled out aircraft and atmospheric effects before deciding to report the unusual events. Whatever was behind these lights even showed up on radar. With this extraordinary amount of credible evidence, it was hard to deny that something strange was happening in the night sky over Texas. In 1951, this kind of uncertainty wasn't just some weird thing to ignore or debate at parties. During the emergence of the Cold War, the sky could be a frontline, and anything unexplained had to be treated as a potential threat. The strange events of August 1951 started in Albuquerque, New Mexico. A couple sitting in their backyard at dusk noticed a large object passing silently overhead. They later described it as something resembling a huge airplane, estimating it to be roughly 1.5 times the size of a B-36 bomber, one of the largest aircraft in the US military fleet. The object appeared to have swept-back wings, like a shallow V shape, and was lined with 6 to 8 pairs of bluish-colored lights, separated by dark bands running from front to back. What struck the couple the most was the behavior. The object moved rapidly without any engine noise, which was unlike the military craft they were accustomed to seeing in the area. Oh, and the husband was an employee of the United States Atomic Energy Commission with Level Q security clearance, the highest level for national security at the time, and access to top-secret restricted data. This first eyewitness account happened just after dark. Later that night, several Texas Tech professors in Lubbock were drinking tea while observing the night sky for micrometeors when a fast-moving semicircular formation made of roughly 20 to 30 lights passed directly overhead. An hour later, the objects returned, this time in a looser formation. The group included trained observers, and none could identify what they were seeing. Over the following weeks, the group documented 12 other similar sightings. One of the professors eventually reported the sightings to the Lubbock Morning Avalanche, and on August 26, 1951, the first public account of what would become known as the Lubbock Lights appeared in print. 5 days later, Carl Hart Jr. photographed the strange lights and secured their place in UFO history. The incredibly mystifying image depicts numerous disc-like objects that appear to be producing light flying in a V-shaped formation. One of Hart's pictures appeared in the local newspaper, then the national press, and the story quickly spread beyond West Texas. In 1951, an established UFO culture didn't really exist yet. Strange lights in the sky didn't automatically say, "We are being visited by extraterrestrials," but the Lubbock Lights launched a new era of UFO sightings and speculation. And in a time when strange phenomena could be photographed, analyzed, and debated by hobbyists and scientists alike, the press, and eventually the US government, started to review sightings with increased urgency. When the government examined Hart's negatives, they confirmed the photos were legitimate, although the official statement was vague. The photos were never proven to be a hoax, but neither were they proven to be genuine. So did the widespread public attention paid to the Lubbock Lights contribute to the growing questions surrounding unidentified aerial phenomenon? There would eventually be around 200 other surprisingly consistent sightings in Lubbock alone. It's possible that media attention amplified or even inspired some of these accounts. That kind of pattern is common in cases like this. Someone sees something weird and talks about it, and the stories pile up. But what made the Lubbock Lights different was that many sightings were reported directly to authorities and didn't appear in the press at all. The Air Force took the claims seriously, especially after the Air Defense Command Network confirmed objects on their radar moving 900 miles per hour. The only confirmed nearby air traffic that evening was a commercial flight 50 miles west and a B-25 Air Force plane south of the city, neither of which could travel at that speed. The late 40s and 50s were a notable time for novel aeronautical inventions and advancements. Weather balloons, jets breaking the sound barrier, human-made artificial satellites, Sputnik, the introduction of commercial jet airlines. The US Air Force was established in 1947 after World War II proved that air power was a critical and decisive tool for the military. Between the use of atomic bombs and the opening of the Cold War, strange, potentially dangerous objects flying around in the sky was cause for concern and needed to be investigated. It became a real public fear that experts didn't know what to do after the Lubbock Lights. Astronomers, engineers, and military analysts knew the evidence was real, but it didn't fit clearly into any known category. For the military, that uncertainty was dangerous. Early warning systems were designed to detect hostile aircraft and missiles, but they weren't built to identify strange lights in the sky. A false alarm could trigger public panic, and a missed threat could be catastrophic. Around the same time, the government began to look at ways to formally document UFO cases, shifting its stance on the validity of UFO reports. They began to take those reports more seriously and provide resources to investigate them. A year after the Lubbock Lights, the Air Force formally established Project Blue Book, an official government program created to systematically investigate reports of unidentified flying objects, following a surge of cases like the Lubbock Lights. The primary mission at Project Blue Book was to help process the flood of new reports of unexplained objects in the sky and determine whether a reported object posed a threat to national security. If it could be determined that the object was likely of a known origin, like an aircraft, a weather balloon, or a meteor, the case could be closed. If not, the report was documented and the object was categorized as unidentified. Project Blue Book also served as a public-facing program. By offering explanations when possible, the Air Force hoped to reduce speculation and calm public anxiety. Many cases could be identified and resolved, but others, like the Lubbock Lights, could not be closed. H. Marshall Chadwell, the assistant director of the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence, who helped establish a panel to examine Project Blue Book data, was less concerned with investigating the source of the unidentified objects and focused more on the public mass hysteria the objects seemed to be causing. Chadwell believed the reports of sightings might have been manufactured by the Soviet Union. By flooding military communication with false sightings, the Soviets could more easily deploy and hide their own military aircraft should actual hostile attacks be carried out. Former director of Project Blue Book, Major Edward Rappelt, wrote about his experiences with the program. Although he did not believe in extraterrestrial objects himself, he acknowledged that many others within the military believed the UFO sightings were credible. Rappelt would go on the record to say that the Lubbock Lights was by far the best combination of UFO reports I'd ever read, and I'd read every one of the Air Force's files. I'm less interested in whether the Lubbock Lights were extraterrestrial craft, atmospheric plasma, or misidentified birds than in how scientific and military systems responded when the observations didn't lead to a clear answer. Hundreds of people reported seeing the lights, but the cases that drew the most attention were the ones that produced usable data, like photographs or radar runs, or ones that came from certain witnesses treated as more credible, like the government employee and the science professors. As trained experts in the night sky and aerial movement, their reports are more usable within the scientific and military systems. Newspapers emphasize that the first observers were respectable scientists, implicitly contrasting them with the rural residents and working-class townspeople who had also reported strange lights. The photographs were taken seriously because they are physical evidence that can be analyzed by experts and circulated through institutional channels. Credibility is often unevenly distributed. This pattern is common. As someone who studies the history of folklore, monsters, and all things weird, I've seen how we have consistently trusted witnesses who align with dominant social expectations of the time. Take dragons, for instance. Stories of huge, powerful serpents had circulated in China for centuries, but these accounts were largely unknown to Europeans. That was until interest intensified when prominent figures like Marco Polo wrote about them. The stories didn't suddenly become real, but they became easier to believe in a culture that gives higher trust to certain narrators over others. What cases like the Lubbock Lights reveal is not just how we investigate strange phenomena, but how selective skepticism shapes what we consider believable. Ultimately, the Lubbock Lights case was never solved. No conclusive explanation was given, either by the Air Force or Project Blue Book, but a non-committal conclusion was provided. The sightings were not proven to be a hoax, they remained not conclusively identified, no evidence of hostile intent was found, and no further action was recommended. Over the last few years, the declassification of various global government agencies' explorations into UAPs has brought renewed interest to the Lubbock Lights and other strange sightings, and you would hope this would democratize things, which it kind of has. According to a declassified U.S. intelligence report released in 2021, 144 government-reported sightings between 2004 and 2021 were believed to probably represent physical objects, given the various modes in which they were recorded, including infrared and weapon-seeking technologies. But what those objects were was inconclusive. They provide 5 explanation categories: industry or government developmental programs, airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, foreign adversary systems, or, my personal favorite, the other category. Unlike the US, the UK government's record release showed they did not see UFO sightings as a threat, and they closed their investigation desk dedicated to sightings in 2009. Yet the rumors persist, the stories circulate, and belief in extraterrestrial beings is more common than belief in other kinds of monsters or phenomena. We want to believe, and I think part of that comes from wanting to prove naysayers wrong and challenge so-called official narratives. So I guess what I'm saying is, question everything. Before you go, we want to tell you about The Story in Us, a new PBS documentary miniseries that explores the universal art of storytelling. Films cover everything from Navajo weavers, West African griots, and the deaf theater. It all shows how these unique traditions preserve and communicate culture, history, and identity. There's a link in the description. Thanks in advance. And a B-25 Air Force plane south of the city. So he quickly grabbed his loaded camera.
Mm-hmm.
It was taken almost 75 years.
I just moved into your leg.
David!
My bad.